Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 172nd Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Zoom call. We're starting with 19 people on the line. We are just full of stuff we're going to talk about today in our pursuit of fair elections and a survivable planet. We're waiting to be joined by the great Andrea Miller, who has a couple of big things to talk about, including an incredible court case that's been really annoying, bothering, angering me and a lot of other people. A woman in Texas who dared to vote has been given 5 years probation. Well, actually, she's been in limbo for 5 years with very serious counts against her, and the courts finally have dropped that. Andrea Miller is an expert on that, and she's got some other things to tell us about election protection, which are really important. We're then going to be joined by Roger Rappaport in Michigan. We've got a new organization coming out of Michigan that we want to talk to people about in terms of producing really good copy for the internet. We also have Roger is a filmmaker and has made an award-winning film about our election process. Just won a big award here in Los Angeles. He's based, of course, in the film capital of the world, which is Muskegon, Michigan, on the west coast of Michigan. But Roger, I've known since the University of Michigan in the 1960s. And then we're going to talk about the Palisades nuclear plant. We're joined by one of the great godfathers of the safe energy movement, Carl Grossman, who has a notch on his belt from the Shoreham nuclear plant, which he was instrumental in keeping shut way back when. Great to have you with us, Carl. Also joined by John Steiner in Colorado, where I guess there's a big piece of housing legislation that's wending its way through, and maybe we can talk about that with you, John. I just want to say I hope it's snowing. We're always glad in LA when there's precipitation in Colorado. So, but you've had a lot, so we can't be greedy. And then in the second hour, we're joined by Jay Ponte, a great organizer and author who's got a lot to tell us about grassroots organizing. And we may be getting an update, I hope, on Julian Assange. There's always stuff to talk about when it comes to Julian Assange and the proceedings with that, and with, of course, Leonard Peltier and Mumia and Steve Donziger. So we've got a major gathering to deal with today. Myra Reeson, you've got a hand. Did you want to tell us something, Myra?
Well, I'd like to ask you, Harvey, I know we have a really full agenda, but I'm hoping that you might be able to give us a little bit more information about that lawsuit against Greenpeace.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good to, I'm glad you reminded me. I am a voting member of Greenpeace. I became a senior advisor 30 years ago. So now I'm a very, 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 very senior advisor to Greenpeace USA. And they have been hit with a major lawsuit. Let's talk about it now. I don't see Andrea Miller on yet. So if maybe Steve or Mike, if you could email Andrea real quickly and give her a reminder that we're waiting for her. Greenpeace has been hit with a major lawsuit by a right-wing legal foundation that does this kind of thing. And it's going to be heard, I believe, in Wyoming, where they're jury shopping and judge shopping to find the most reactionary anti-environmental environment they can find to have this lawsuit. It's very, very dangerous. People should go to greenpeace.org, check it out. This is a definite attempt to kill Greenpeace, and it's been going on for a while. It's really stressing the organization in a bad way, but it's something we're just going to have to deal with. And thank you for raising that. So, Myra, so if people want to go to greenpeace.org and check out what's going on there, it's very important that you do so. We're joined by Paul Newman, a homeowner in Los Angeles with solar panels on his rooftop. We are It is, Mike, it is a SLAPP suit, yes, of some kind. I'm not the legal expert on the lawsuit against Greenpeace, but it's very serious and people need to take a look by going to the website. I do want to mention there was an article this week in the New York Times. Everybody is preoccupied, and rightly so, with the attempted coup d'etat led by Donald Trump in 2020, where with the storming of the Capitol by basically the fascist MAGA movement. But there was a successful coup d'etat that was violent and that did turn the election in Florida 2000. There was an article about it this past week in the New York Times talking about the butterfly ballot that was used in Broward County to defraud the election, basically. And people forget that during the vote count in Florida 2000, there was a violent attack by what was called the Brooks Brothers mob. And the Brooks Brothers mob was a bunch of right-wing yuppies, basically. They were much better dressed than the mob that attacked the Capitol building on January 6th, 2021. But during the vote count in 2000, these people violently attacked the people who were counting the votes in Florida 2000, and they stopped the vote count. And that was then certified by the U.S. Supreme Court in the infamous Bush v. Gore decision, which the Supreme Court said, well, don't use this as precedent. It's a one-time decision where we're going to hand the presidency to George W. Bush, even though he didn't really win it. And so this past week, the Times ran a piece about the ballot that was used in South Florida and came to the conclusion that ballot alone, it was a ridiculous butterfly ballot, incomprehensible, really induced people who thought they were voting for Al Gore to in fact vote for Pat Buchanan.
Welcome, Ray McClendon.
We're joined by Ray. Hey, Ray, how are you, bro? Good to see you. The conclusion of the Times was that this fraudulent ballot, which was used in South Florida in 2000, confused enough voters that they mistakenly voted, as I say, for Pat Buchanan, and there were enough of them that it cost Al Gore the election. As many of you recall, it was 537 votes, I believe, that were the margin of victory for Gore, for Bush in Florida 2000. And this article concluded that more than that number of people had been defrauded of their ballot with this butterfly ballot, thereby costing Al Gore the election. We're joined by Andrea Miller, and we have Ray McClendon with her. There's going to be a lot to talk about voter protection here. Wendy, you had a quick hand, and then we'll go to Ray and Andrea. Wendy Liederman.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just a real quick hand. Thank you. Yeah, just really quick, because the Gore election was the first election I ever voted in. I was in Broward County, and I have to share this anecdote of, I remember, I'll never forget, and probably why I'm here, watching the local news that night, waiting for the counts to come in, and the whole country was waiting on Miami-Dade County. And this is aside from the butterfly ballots and all the other malarkey going on, just alone, straightforward, waiting for the counts to come in. Everyone's waiting on Dade. The local news called Miami-Dade County for Al Gore as the winner.
Oh yeah, they all did.
Of presidential election. And then about a half an hour later, the national news came on and called it for Bush. So I'm like literally in my room watching it get called for Gore locally, and then the national news said something completely different. And now I want to just say, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
Thank you. So, and I was just going to say on the note of the butterfly ballots, I mean, just recently, I want to say it was the last election we had. It was either the last 2 or the last 4 years, but I think it was the last 2. There was some confusion that went out when the mail-in ballots got sent out. they were sent to people that had like the wrong addresses. I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact details, but it was just basically like the ballots went to the wrong places, or people that sent them in wouldn't be counted for the right places. And it was too close to the election to cure it. So there were tens of thousands of mail-in ballots that were unusable completely
Right.
in Florida. This is just the party doing its thing. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as I say, Al Gore once again certified as the rightful winner of the 2000 election. Again, January 6th was actually nothing compared to what happened in South Florida 2000, with a violent attack on the people who were counting the ballots by the Brooks Brothers mob. And the legal team of the Brooks Brothers mob in Florida 2000 included John Roberts, who's the current Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, and Brett Kavanaugh. All three of those current Supreme Court justices were part of the Brooks Brothers mob that flipped the election in 2000. So never forget that. Okay, we're joined by the great Andrea Miller with Ray McClendon. Andrea has got two things to talk about with us, at least. A brand new fundraising mechanism of which everyone can take note, and then still more stuff, Andrea, that this amazing horrendous attack on this woman in Texas who dared to vote, and finally, after 5 years, the courts have found in her favor. And Ray McClendon, you're always welcome to join in as well. Andrea, go ahead, please. Tell us about this funding mechanism, and then we'll talk about this court case, please. Oh, you're muted. Wait. Why is this always unmuted? There we go.
Okay, great. Harvey and everybody, it is great to see you folks. Now, we have a new fundraising platform. So if any of you are raising money, want you to notice this is one of the platforms in Wendy's notes. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen. This is a program that is called Give Butter. Now, why am I so in love with Give Butter? Oh, there are so many reasons. Let me count them. Number one, Give Butter allows you at any point in your fundraising to announce there is a match. One of the other programs we use, Class E, which costs us $8,500 a year, we have to say it's a match at the very beginning. We can't turn it on after the fact. So we know that a couple more matches are coming. Next, you can do peer-to-peer fundraising. What is that? Other people can raise money for you. Now, we haven't launched this. We just had a big peer-to-peer fundraiser end on the 29th. This will launch later this week. So this is what it looks like. The team members who are raising funds. And here's the biggie for us. The big one for us is some of our donors have their own funds, or they donate through donor advised funds. I'm not really going to donate $1,000, and I don't need to write a message. Any kind of money this system can take. Now, since it's free, they make their money by begging for tips, very much the way ActBlue does. But it takes Google Pay, it takes credit card, Venmo, PayPal, Pay with ACH, donor advised fund, or people can indicate they want to mail a check. I've gone to events in California where people just give me cash. It can take cash as well. So it is a beautiful platform. And when we do our gala, we will be able to swap out this image and literally show text to donate and a QR code. And then as the donations come in, they will use this as the broadcast screen. So absolutely, positively love this. If you are looking for a fundraising platform, the best support I have ever encountered on any program I have ever used in my life. So love it, love it, love it. This is Give Butter. So anybody, if you would like to be a fundraiser for us, we are planning on reaching 18 million. We're probably going to change this instead of Black voters to BIPOC, because we are talking about doing Hispanic voters in Texas. So the number will still be 18 million. We reached 14 million BIPOC voters in 2020. So we've got to be bigger and better than that. And now one last quick thing. I'm not even going to put it in present mode. Texas, home of Crystal Mason. We are going into Texas. Now, Texas only has 1.3 million Black voters, and they make up 7.8% of the registered voting population in Texas. We know when we add the Hispanic voters, those numbers are going to get bigger, and we will end up with about 35% of the voters in Texas. Now, our counties are probably going to remain the same. So you can see Harris, Dallas. Obviously, everybody knows Houston is in Harris County and Dallas is Dallas. I want to show you just very, very quickly some numbers. The first and only time we ever worked in Texas was in 2020. And then I just got these numbers. These are the Black voters who showed up to vote. So in 2016, the previous presidential year, 157,000 Black voters showed up. 2018, it dropped. We would expect that for the midterm. In 2020, when we did work in Texas, 210,825, all those large counties, we were working there. Again, we were working remotely. 2022, we did not work in Texas, and that number came down lower than 2018. So what we do in terms of our outreach to Black voters really and truly does work. So Harvey, thank you for giving me the time. I'm going to yield back and answer any questions if people have them. Otherwise, I will let you get on with your program. Oh, yes, I see Mike Hurst going, and Andrea was on The View. All right, let me give you that link, right. Yes.
Yeah, Andrew was on The View. Everybody should look. Fantastic. Really great.
And here's the View link. People have been bugging me about it all day. So I just keep it up so I can go, all right, yeah. So, oh, goody. I love questions. Myla and then Ruth.
Please, go ahead. Myra and then Ruth.
Yeah, Andrea, well, I'm really intrigued by this Give Butter fundraising website application. And I'm wondering, in terms of, I'm thinking about Pacifica Radio, Harvey and I are both on the national board. And I am wondering if Pacifica were to use this, would they be able to keep a record of who donated and when they donated? Is that part of?
Yes, that's the whole idea behind using Give Butter. You have people who step up to fundraise. You can have individuals, you can have teams. Most of the people on my page are members of my board or their advisors. And then there will be some other miscellaneous people. Each fundraiser has their own link. They get their own page with their name on it. So they circulate their page, and when the donations come in, it is all aggregated on the back end, but it tells you who the fundraiser was. So yes.
Well, the question
And you can do auctions.
No. The question isn't who the fundraiser is. The question is because Pacifica offers membership to people. So
Right.
people become members of a specific radio station if they donate $25 or more. Would you be able to track it to make sure that you know who has given 25 or more so that they would then become
Yes,
members?
yes, that is the most basic function of any fundraising system. Who gave you what when? Yes,
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Great.
yes, yes.
And
Mhm.
I assume they have a special category for vegans, which is almond butter. So Ruth Strauss and
No,
then
unfortunately, there's only butter. Yes,
okay, Ruth Strauss and then Ron Leonard.
yeah.
Yeah, Andrea, either you or Ray or any other voting guru on this call can answer this. This isn't quite related, but it's still important. There have been so many crooked things that have gone on with the vote that, I'm forgetting an old term that used to be important, which was caging voters.
Yes.
Can you remind me about that and if we are doing anything or what we should be doing or whatever? I'm taking advantage of your and Ray's being here. Thank you.
All right. Well, Ray is going to get that one because I don't remember the term caging. I know it's there. I used to do a lot of work around it, and I'm going, oh boy, I don't remember. So I'm going to push that over to Ray, and Ray can go look it up and go, yes, caging is. What we try to do is identify what are the potential problems voters are going to run into and then work around them. Oh, and Harvey, I was supposed to talk about Crystal Mason. So voters like Crystal Mason in Texas, a woman who had a felony charge but was not currently incarcerated, presented herself to vote, found she wasn't on the voter rolls, and had a conversation with someone working the polls who was like, yeah, you can probably go and vote. And so she read the information and she was like, okay, I think I'm okay. And she voted. And then it turned out they were like, no, you've got an active felony and felons in the state of Texas cannot vote. And they threw the book at her and basically wanted to put her in jail for 5 years. That has now been overturned, saying when someone commits a crime, they must be intending to commit a crime. She was not attempting to vote illegally. She was simply attempting to vote. She got a provisional ballot because she wasn't on the rolls, and the ballot wasn't counted anyway. So again, where was the harm? They harmed the innocent because they could.
Outrageous, just outrageous. She never did go to prison though, right?
Well, she had that hanging over her head for
Right.
5 years.
Right, just awful, horrible. Ray, do you want to comment on that? Did you follow
Yeah,
this?
Ray, do you want to do caging? Otherwise, I can go look it up.
Yeah, no. Caging really is a narrower term utilized around voter purging. And it typically, or it used to be, the simple way to do it would be to send out mailers and all of those that had no forwarding associated with them. Those would be the potential caged voters. Well, it's more sophisticated than that now because what these individuals now have these more elaborate ways of cross-referencing voters' addresses that they can receive with information from the Secretary of State. And if there are any issues related to them, they can do a data match and kick out literally thousands of voters at the same time, as opposed to just having some mail being returned. So
Yeah.
the purging process has become much more sophisticated. And because of voter suppression laws, it's much easier for individuals to do than the old system of a party simply mailing out some non-forwardable mail and then quote unquote caging those where the mail couldn't be forwarded. So the process
Yeah, you
now
know,
is much more
thank you for
sophisticated.
whoever put that thing by Greg Palast, because he was the one that came up with the term a while back. But I did just hear of, you know, some states mailing out these postcards that say, you know, if you want to still be on our rolls, mail it back, and that it looked like junk mail anyway. And then if
Yes.
it didn't get mailed back, then they would throw people off.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that now you could go and get a list and take that to the local election board and say that I want to challenge all of these. That's one thing for a party or the Secretary of State to do it, or the top election official. But now individuals can do that with less information that's inaccurate. And that's what the challenge is. We have serial voter challengers in Georgia that their role is to go into local election boards to challenge thousands of individual citizens' right to vote. And if you don't follow up, then you'll be kicked off the rolls.
Wow. Ron Leonard, did you want to say something, Ron Leonard?
Yes, I did. And I wanted to say hi to Andrea and Ray. It's always wonderful to see you, man. And I was hoping to give you two guys the greatest news in the world, which is the Biden campaign has finally figured out that they're not going to get elected unless they can, wait for it, get black and brown voters to the polls. Oh my God, what an amazing thing that they finally figured this out, and they're acting on it. And you know how they act on things not all that well. But so I'm hoping that you, Andrew and Ray and others can get involved with the new revelation that the Democrats really do need to have black and brown voters and go out and vote. And there's one little tidbit I wanted to give you. This is a technical thing called couping. Have you ever heard of couping? Having to relate to voting.
No, I
Well,
haven't.
No,
you should
missed that
know
one.
this one. This is a good one because it was actually, as Harvey knows, the demise of Edgar Allan Poe. And what it was is the person who would go out and vote and do his duty, when he exited the polls, they would hand him a big glass of the cheapest liquor that they could possibly give people for free. And unfortunately, Edgar drank it. And that was his last day at the voting polls.
Well, amazing stuff. And thank you, Ron, for that. I can't resist, since you're on The View, I have to tell a really bad joke. Andrea and Ray, a Jewish woman has a son, and she wants him to marry a Jewish girl, and he keeps bringing home non-Jewish women. And finally, he calls up his mother and says, "Mom, I'm getting married, and her last name is Goldberg." And the woman says, "Whoopee." And he says, "Oh, you know her." There you go. Okay.
I want to say one other thing too, which is, and I know Wendy can share more detail on this, but I do believe that Florida is now going to be more in play. It's not going to necessarily be winnable unless without a miracle, but the Florida Supreme Court's decision today to allow for abortion to be on the ballot
Right.
should be a significant boost in Florida, and will make people give a second look on how that could really boost the progressive vote in Georgia. I mean, in Florida. And
Well,
so
then the
I
question
think it's
is,
something that we really need to be paying attention to going forward.
the other question about Florida, well, there are many, but what happened? The referendum passed allowing ex-felons to vote. And then the legislature stepped in with all these financial requirements. What has happened with that in terms of eligibility to vote in Florida for ex-felons?
Number one, it was very, very sloppy legislation. So when we work on our constitutional amendment in Virginia, there is a phrase, irrespective of payment of fines and fees. So when you write legislation, you have to look at what are the barriers, what are things that people can bring up to stop you, and you need to write that into the law. They did not write that into the law in Florida. I suggested it and no one took me up on it. So now that Virginia is working on ours, I made sure that was in the Virginia law. So it is still exactly the same as it was. People who have not paid their fines and fees are not able or allowed to register. I forget which rather progressive athletes said, oh, tell me the fines and fees and I'm going to just pay them. And they're like, nope, So now they've made it very difficult for people to find out what their total fines and fees are.
Wow. So I think it was LeBron, but it's outrageous. It's just outrageous. And it could decide the election. I mean, if that had not been in place, I'm not sure Ron DeSantis would have actually gotten elected. So
Right, because they reversed 800 some odd thousand people.
yeah, outrageous. So listen, I want to introduce you. We have a Michigan team who's joined us here. Rachel Dwoskin, Kevin Camps, the great nuclear expert, and Roger Rappaport, who I've known since 1966 from the University of Michigan Daily. He was the editor of the Daily the year after I was editorial director. And Roger has made a phenomenal film about elections that's just won a major award in California. Roger, of course, lives in the film capital of the world, which is Muskegon, Michigan. But Roger, can you tell us about this film you made? You're talking with Andrea Miller and Ray McClendon, two of the great organizers of Grassroots turnout here. Can you tell us about your film, Roger?
So a lot of people aren't going to vote in this election. Last time it was 80 million, didn't vote last time, who were eligible. This time it'll probably be higher looking at the primaries right now. Part of it is deja vu and burnout and so on. But a lot of people don't think their votes count. I can tell you that in my county, Muskegon County, that Obama won the last time, the second campaign, he won by 13,000 votes. Hillary won by about 1,000. And I think Biden won by about 3,000. And effectively, it's the unlikely voters that are going to decide this election. All of us know them. Many of them are extremely well educated. They just don't want to vote. And if they don't vote in this election, I'm not talking about the uncommitted, the uncommitted voters. I'm talking about the people who don't make the polls. So I was trying to figure out a way to open a conversation with them. Obviously, they have many reasons that they don't want to vote. We all know about that. Lots of excuses. Everything from, oh, I forgot it was today, to, more like, well, it doesn't really make any difference, or, my vote isn't going to count, and so on. But without those votes, the ones that don't get the door knocks and don't get the last minute phone calls, I really think both parties are in trouble, to tell you the truth. And the deciding factor, certainly in Michigan, is turnout. Now, I want to give you a very good example. We had a hotly contested mayoral election in my town. As many people as have ever voted in our city for a mayor turned out, 25%. So, as you know, in Poland, they had a huge turnout and the conservative majority lost big because there was an unexpected surge of people turning out in the last election, and they threw out the conservative government. That's what we need to be thinking about. And in terms of trying to get to them, everything imaginable. I have a very good friend whose son doesn't vote for all kinds of reasons. He's very well educated. He has a good job. He's an actor. He's a very smart guy. He just doesn't want to vote. So I've been trying to figure out how to open that conversation. And one idea I thought about was humor. So a lot of people don't really know who Putin is because they don't pay attention to any media at all. They don't listen to any of the things that we all listen to. They don't read the papers. They don't follow any network. They're not single-minded. They don't have a trusted source or anything like that. That has to change. And what people need to realize is they need to listen to all sides and then make up their own mind. And to that end, I did this 8-part web series about Putin and Trump. Essentially, the storyline is they're both in jail.
That's a good
Trump
start.
is in Leavenworth because he's been convicted, of course. And Putin, of course, is in The Hague because he's awaiting trial for war crimes, naturally. And on the same day, Xi Jinping liberates them and takes them to an undisclosed location in China. Obviously not a prison because that's not going to work. They'd be killed immediately or something bad would happen. So he puts them in a Chinese grocery store because he figures nobody will figure out that's where they are. And that's where they meet really for the first time. And they talk about their respective comebacks. And the point of this is only to try to get people to listen to a, quote, non-political thing, what it would be like for the two of them to have a chance to really talk it out. Remember, they've only really met, like in Finland, a highly couple of hours. They had a few phone calls, but they don't really know each other. They've never really hung out. So this is really their opportunity to talk through their respective careers. Now, I'm not expecting everybody to watch this, but the idea is this opens the conversation to what it would be like to have, the two of them talking through their respective plans for a comeback. Now, regardless of how anybody in this group or anywhere else sees this, whether it's this video or something else, I think it's fair to say that of the millions of people that are going to vote, if all of them just called one person they knew that literally has decided they're not going to vote and said, listen, I just want you to start doing your own homework. Don't worry about one trusted source. Don't listen to me. Just here are some things, read John Bolton and then read something by Trump. I swear, if anybody read one chapter of John Bolton's book, they would probably go to the polls. I'm not kidding. That's the problem.
Roger, you have a series. Can you put the link to the series in the chat?
Yeah, I can do that now.
You're talking with Ray McClendon and Andrea Miller, who are the king and queen or the royalty of Get Out the Vote. So, and these are the great heroes of the Georgia Miracle. So I want you to be in touch with them. Roger's made a number of films. He's a truly great journalist. And if you'll put the link to your work in the chat, that would be great, Roger.
That's great. I'll do that. Yeah.
Also, you are in Michigan, and you're working with Rachel Dwoskin here, who's joined the call.
Right.
And you have what is your project here in terms of your writing project here? Because I wanted everybody to hear about this. Rachel and Roger, can you put
Go ahead, Rachel.
the link in?
Hi.
Okay, Rachel,
So,
go ahead.
Thank you for having me, and thank you guys for the brilliant radical work that you're doing. I'm so glad to be in this room. I'll be super brief. Our organization is called Writers for Democratic Action, and we're a sort of scrappy group of writers who formed as Writers Against Trump in 2020 to avoid hideous electoral outcomes and to mobilize literary communities in every state that we possibly could across America. So we now have 3,000 plus members. We have hundreds of bookstore and library partners. And what we do is work in communities with community organizations that already exist to protect civil liberties and to fight censorship. We're on the front lines of the book banning battles in Michigan and elsewhere. I'm obviously in Chicago. I'm actually in Illinois, but I'm from Michigan. And since on our steering committee, which is entirely volunteer, we actually don't have anyone from Michigan, I'm chairing the Michigan State Committee. And one of our projects is called It Can't Happen Here. And this is the project that we're hoping you'll all participate in. Basically, in 1936, there was an agitprop play adapted by Sinclair Lewis based on his, Nobel Prize winning novel, It Can't Happen Here. And it was performed across 21 stages, 17 states simultaneously as a rallying cry against the rise of fascism in the US. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And we decided at WDA to make an homage to that project. And what we did was we wrote collaboratively a 28-page script. So it can be done in under half an hour. It's got 5 players. And it's agitprop theater. And what we're trying to do is set up hundreds of productions across America and beyond. Since I happen that week to be in Greece, I'm going to do a production there. As a way to say no thank you. Of course, that's the night that Trump will be nominated. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat here. All folks have to do to sign up is fill out that little Google form saying I'm going to do a reading, and it can be in your living room, in your cultural center. Our bookstore partners are all doing it. We're doing it in parks in Chicago. We're trying to make it as democratic as possible. We're pretty proud of the script. It's written by writers. We're trying to use writing to move the needle, and especially in Michigan, where we're very concerned about, voter turnout. So if you guys could partner with us as an organization, that would be amazing. You can partner with Writers for Democratic Action in general just by signing your name. We don't burden you with enormous amounts of email or odious obligations. You can partner with us just for this project, and everybody can do a reading of It Can't Happen Here as a huge democratic action that's collaborative, a chorus of our voices. Thank you.
That was great. Andrea and Ray, I'm wondering, are there democracy centers that might be interested in putting on this play, maybe? That'd be a good draw. Rachel and Roger, Andrea and Ray, as part of their Get Out the Vote organizing, have been setting up democracy centers in BIPOC communities. And this might be a fun thing to do at one of them to present this play. Just a thought.
Well, I love the fact that it can be done as a reading. There's another play that I'm involved with, First Ladies and the Big White Lie, and that's being done as a reading. So I don't know that our more urban democracy centers, maybe it would be very interesting to see what our rural ones would think of. There's an organizer meeting tomorrow, so I will keep this link and bring this up with our organizers. So we have 45 organizers. Many of them are in California and New York, so it could be very interesting. The New York one especially, because they are literally right behind Lincoln Center.
Cool. I was curious, to back up a minute, do you have democracy centers in Florida and Texas?
No, we do not.
All right, well, just something else. Rachel, it's a really cool project. You saying it can be done with 5 people? The play?
Yes. Yeah, 5 parts. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a lovely idea. We would be ecstatic. Thank you for suggesting it.
All right, well, you're in touch now with the greatest. So, and Steve Caruso, our engineer, thank you for putting that up. That is a really a good post to come up with so quickly. And here we are. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to the nuke thing. I want to point out Roger Rappaport is also a truly great writer, has written quite a few books in his day, and has made, how many movies have you made, Roger?
3.
3. One about it, the airlines was really.
That's right. And unfortunately, the airline story is really hitting hard right now. And Kevin will talk a little bit more about the limits of technology in another industry, but it's the same problem. Right. And he'll explain the problems.
Well, let's move to that. So Roger lives on the west coast of Michigan, and near the Palisades nuclear plant, about which, of course, Carl Grossman knows a lot. But what's going on with the Palisades nuclear plant, which has also been raised now at a nuclear plant in Ontario, and of course the Gavin Newsom attempt to keep operating Diablo Canyon in California, is this idea of taking large sums of money, over $1 billion in all three cases, and keeping ridiculously old, and in the case of Palisades, a nuclear plant that's already been shut, and trying to put it back online. It's the definition of insanity. So Kevin, who's been with us many times and is one of the great experts and activists on the nuclear issue, also a Michigan boy, can you tell us, Kevin, we've got, I believe, 40 people on the line now. This is quite a turnout for the day after Easter, by the way, so I'm glad to see everybody with us. Kevin, can you tell us about this insanity of the money that the Biden administration wants to give to reopen the Palisades nuclear plant, which has already been shut? Kevin, are you unmuted? I got to unmute you here. There we go.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Yes, I am from Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is where I met Harvey back in 1993. He was speaking at Western Michigan University, and I'd worked on nuclear weapons for over a year at that point, but that really changed my trajectory as an activist into the nuclear power issue. I had been blissfully ignorant of the Palisades atomic reactor growing up in Kalamazoo, but my eyes were now opened after being on a peace march to shut down the nuclear weapons test site and hearing Harvey speak. And I've been watchdogging Palisades ever since, first as a volunteer in Michigan in the 1990s. And I moved to Washington, worked at NEARS for 8 years. I've worked at Beyond Nuclear for the past 15 years or so. But I've never taken my eyes off Palisades because my family, my hometown, is just 40 miles downwind of Palisades. It's one of the most dangerous atomic reactors in the country and perhaps the world. We breathed a huge sigh of relief when Entergy closed it on May 20th of 2022, but we were nervous because the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, a month earlier had floated a trial balloon to not let it shut down. And little did we know that the new company coming in to supposedly decommission it, Holtec, we knew enough about them to know it was a really bad idea, but we didn't know what they were up to. Behind the scenes, they took ownership on June 28th. That was public knowledge. A week later, secretly, they applied to the US Department of Energy for many billions of dollars in restart bailouts. And they would not make that public until September 9th of 2022, alongside Governor Whitmer. They also, even before Whitmer floated the restart trial balloon, we call it the zombie reactor restart, the CEO of Holtec, Krishna Singh, had floated a trial balloon, like he'd already done at Oyster Creek, New Jersey, to, let's decommission this nuclear power plant and then replace it with new small modular reactors on the same site. So he'd already floated that in early April of 2022. September 9th, they went public on the restart. They admitted the existence of the bailout application, but no details were provided, no documentation. We finally got a hold of it. It was dated July 5th, 2022. We finally got a hold of it. We did a press release last October. It's pretty astounding, hyperbolic language in there. They see Palisades, the restart, as the line in the sand for the nuclear power industry. No more shutdowns. No more shutdowns in the United States. No more shutdowns globally. We're going to turn this around as an industry, and we're going to start at Palisades. So they call it a shining talisman for the global nuclear power industry. So how much is this shining talisman of Holtec's going to cost? Well, the other day, the Energy Secretary and Governor Whitmer showed up at Palisades. Roger was there so he can give some inside the room details. But what was announced by the Energy Secretary was a $1.52 billion loan from the US Department of Energy for this restart scheme. The state of Michigan under Whitmer has already approved 150 million. Holtec wants another 150 million. So that would be 300 million from the state, 1.52 billion from the Department of Energy, $1.82 billion. It's but the tip of the iceberg. I've been trying to follow all their bailout requests for the past many months. What I've got it at right now accounted for, documented, is $15.7 billion all told. That's $8.3 billion for the restart scheme of the zombie reactor, which is more than a half century old, and another $7.4 billion for the two so-called small modular reactors that they want to build at Palisades next to the old reactor. So what they're creating is the extremes of the risk spectrum: breakdown phase risks at the old reactor, what are called break-in phase risks at the new reactors. We just observed the 45th annual commemoration of the 3 Mile Island Unit 2 meltdown in Pennsylvania in 1979. That was a brand new reactor. It had only operated for some months. Chernobyl Unit 4 in 1986 was a brand new reactor that melted down. So brand new reactors have meltdowns. It's due to design flaws that are unknown until they go wrong. It's due to operator inexperience. And of course, breakdown phase, Palisades, I mentioned, is perhaps the most dangerous reactor in the world in terms of neutron embrittlement of the reactor pressure vessel, which is like a hot glass under cold water, only at 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. It's a pathway to fracturing the vessel, guaranteed reactor core meltdown, last line of defense, the containment structures, which failed ×3 at Fukushima. But in addition to that pathway, you've got the reactor vessel closure head, which has needed replacement for more than 2 decades. You have the steam generators that have needed replacement for more than 2 decades. Davis-Besse, Ohio, a near miss with a reactor vessel head corrosion hole in 2002, the worst near miss since 3 Mile Island. Steam generator failures, San Onofre in California, 2 reactors shut down in June of 2013, shut down for good because of steam generator failures of extreme safety risk. You've got all of this combined at Palisades. And just one last pathway I'll mention is control rod drive mechanism seals, because they've been failing at Palisades since 1972. And the latest failure was on May 20th, 2022. It forced Entergy to close the reactor for good 11 days earlier than scheduled because they had their latest seal leak. This is primary coolant. So all that to say that this is risking a Fukushima or Chernobyl scale catastrophe on the shore of Lake Michigan in a majority African-American and a majority low-income community called Covert Township in Van Buren County, one of the most productive agricultural counties in Michigan, including organic agriculture, on Pokagon Potawatomi land. And yeah, we've got a fight cut out for us. We're going to try to intervene in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission licensing proceeding, relicensing proceeding. It's unprecedented. They've never restarted a closed reactor, so they're making it up as they go. But they made sure to lock us out of the process for over a year at this point. So we're looking for our way in legally. They're trying to deny us entry, and the fight is on. And as Roger pointed out, I'll let Roger talk about the podcast, but we did a press release last week about this new podcast about Palisades. And as Roger pointed out, it's almost impossible to intervene until the licensing proceeding is concluded at the NRC. And all that momentum built up. And that's when you can go to federal court, and then the court's eyes glaze over and they say, but it's already been decided. And that's been our experience for decades with these matters. So the writing is on the wall. We're going to have to figure out how to turn this around. And it's a collaboration, a conspiracy involving the energy secretary who works for the president, the governor of Michigan, similar in California, the state legislature, the nuclear power industry. And I'll just close with this. The Japanese parliament did a root cause investigation of Fukushima Daiichi and determined that the cause of the catastrophe was collusion between the safety regulatory agency, the company Tokyo Electric, and government officials. And we have collusion like that in spades at Palisades, if not worse. So we're really in great peril. 21% of the world's surface freshwater is in great peril with what's going down at Palisades.
It's unbelievable. I did want to mention Ray McClendon is in Georgia, where they're about to open the last big light water reactor at Vogtle 4. And they're only $20 billion over budget at Vogtle 4, but that will be the last big reactor in the United States. I think if forever, there are no more under construction. So now what we're looking at is this complete insanity here of taking a reactor that's been shut for 2 years, right? It's been shut for 2 years. And they're going to restart it. It's like you have a car in your front yard on blocks for 2 years, and then you go out and try and refire. I mean, it's completely insane. Let me go to Myla Reeson and then Carl Grossman. Myla, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, this is just horrifying. I'm wondering, Kevin, we've heard in terms of the licensing or relicensing process that supposedly it's normally a 7-year process, and I'm wondering, are they somehow attempting to shorten that time frame? What are they when are they expecting the NRC to make determinations about restarting this horrible zombie, dangerous, decrepit reactor? And I also have a question about the steam generators, but do you want to start there?
Yeah, so the situation at Palisades is that they had a license in the beginning from 1967 to 2007. That was the initial 40-year license. The company at the time, Consumers Energy and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, actually passed a 4-year extension, which I think is unique in industry, secretly before we knew about it. So now it was a 44-year license, 1967 to 2011. Then they wanted 20 more years out to 31, and we fought that really hard around 2005, 2006, 2007. We got steamrolled. Our main safety objection was the embrittlement of the reactor pressure vessel. One anecdote from that experience, we had a retired NRC whistleblower on embrittlement named Dimitrios Spazdikis, who was retired from NRC. He was working with our team until the NRC Office of General Counsel, opposing us, met with him without our presence, ex parte communications with our expert witness, threatened him that he would lose his pension, he would go to prison, and he would have to pay a huge fine if he continued to work with us. It was a bogus threat, but it worked. They forced him off of our team. We lost that proceeding. Palisades is now licensed out to 2031, but the problem is Entergy relinquished the operating license. They do not have an operating license. They're trying to get it back now through all these shenanigans. And we just learned recently that Holtec has made moves to apply for an 80-year license, 2031 to 2051. So they're joining a small number at this point, a half dozen or so reactors in the country that are seeking these 80-year licenses. So we're battling multiple license amendment requests. We're battling exemptions. We're battling this supplemental license extension. It's all happening at the same time. That's what's going on with that.
So my follow-up, Harvey, I'm sorry, if I can just, I was just curious because I thought that I heard you say that there were similarities between the generator problems at at San Onofre and the generator problems at Palisades. Did you say that? And I'm not. What are the similarities there?
What happened at San Onofre was the company went to replace the old degraded steam generators with new ones in 2012, 2011.
Right.
They were greedy. They packed them with steam generator tubes, too much so they failed. The brand new replacement steam generators failed.
That's right.
And long story short, it led to the shutdown of 2 reactors. What's happened at Palisades is that the previous owner, Consumers, in the year 2006, admitted that the steam generators at Palisades needed to be replaced for the second time in the plant's history. The first replacement was in 1990. Then they said in 2006 they need to be replaced again. That's beyond our ability. This new company, Entergy, will get the job done. The problem is Entergy never got the job done, not from 2007 to 2022. Holtec has now made some lip service in that secret bailout application about replacing the steam generators at a cost of $510 million in-house.
Mm-hmm.
It would all be public money paying for it and going into Holtec's pocket, but it's not being required by NRC. So Holtec would be doing this voluntarily, and I don't think they will. And the reason I say that is that they want to restart Palisades in August of 2025. So you can see that's not a 7-year licensing process. That's a year and a half licensing process, if that. So that's what's afoot at Palisades. I don't know when they would replace the steam generators in the future, if ever. I don't think they will, because NRC doesn't require it.
Well,
Well,
also,
as you-
oh, go ahead,
As,
Miles.
as you may know, Southern California Edison, who was the operator at of San Onofre, wanted to replace the steam generators simply because they wanted to make more money. And they asked for a new design and claimed it was like for like. But I'm wondering, did the steam generators at Palisades actually fail as they did at San Onofre? Or is it simply a question of replacing them because they want more electrical output? Do you?
I think part of it is severe degradation, even admitted by Consumers Energy in 2006. And then if you go far enough back in time, they replaced that first set of steam generators in 1990. It turns out that one of the first incidents at Palisades back in 1971, 72, 73 was failure of 27,000 steam generator tubes in the first generators, led to a lawsuit by the original owner, Consumers Energy, against the builder, Bechtel. They wanted 300 million. They got 13 million. These are $1973. So adjust for inflation. They settled out of court, and then they just carried on with those defective steam generators for another 2 decades, essentially. So they've been playing very serious games of radioactive Russian roulette at Palisades for the entire time, and now they want to take it ever deeper into uncharted risk territory.
People have to understand also that the company coming in here, Holtec, HOLTEC, is a New Jersey company that has zero experience operating or building nuclear reactors. I mean, this is a waste-oriented company. They're close to Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey. So there's a corrupt relationship there. But these guys have no idea what they're doing. And they want to spend $15 billion on bringing back Palisades and then putting in new nuclear plants, the small ones, which there is one prototype in China. Whereas if they took the $15 billion and invested it in wind power, the entire state of Michigan would be transformed with tremendous employment benefits and cheap energy and no safety problems. But wind power in Michigan is tremendously viable, and $15 billion, for God's sakes, will go a heck of a long way to replacing whatever power they think they're going to get from Palisades. But here you are. I mean, it's insane. We went through this in Ohio as well, where they bailed out, or they wanted to bail out the 2 nuclear plants, but could have built billions of dollars worth of windmills in the North Coast there, and they're still not doing it. Let's talk to Carl Grossman. Carl is a great veteran of the shutdown of the Shoreham reactor on Long Island, one of the great victories for the safe energy movement, where they had only invested $7 billion, which went completely down the tubes. Carl, what's your take on Palisades?
Well, I'd like to put it into the context of I did a documentary 34 years ago called "The Push to Revive Nuclear Power," and we're back in another huge push to revive nuclear power. Let me just take a couple of minutes here. This is the New York Times 3 weeks ago. Once pariah, nuclear power finds broad public support. That's the headline in the Times. And what it involves is a vote in the House of Representatives on the Atomic Energy Advancement Act, 365 to 36. And the Times writes, it received backing from Democrats who support nuclear power because nuclear power does not emit greenhouse gases, totally ignoring the fact that the nuclear fuel cycle is highly carbon intensive. And in fact, nuclear plants themselves emit carbon-14, a radioactive form of carbon. And it goes on to here's a piece. This is from 2 days ago, how a proposed huge uranium mine right near Grand Canyon National Park is moving ahead. the Biden administration, the Associated Press, the Biden administration and dozens of other countries have pledged to triple the capacity of nuclear power worldwide in their battle against climate change. I mean, that's the new baloney since I did that documentary 30 plus years ago. What they're talking about here in terms of the Biden administration moving to triple nuclear power with all these other countries is this nuclear energy summit, which was recently held in Brussels. It was a partnership of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which was based on our old U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, which was ultimately by Congress ended because of conflict of interest, couldn't promote, couldn't regulate atomic energy at the same time. The IAEA is an international model of that. And here is an international atomic energy release on this nuclear energy summit, which let's just get this piece of paper open.
At the nuclear energy summit, they admitted that tripling nuclear power in the world would cost $5 trillion. And they had all these, cheerleaders from the nuclear power industry, but the bankers said, you got to be kidding. This is not going to happen. $5 trillion to triple nuclear power in the world is ridiculous. Nobody's going to fund that.
Here's the press release from the IAEA about the summit to highlight the role of nuclear energy in addressing the global challenges to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And I can go on and on what's happening now. Here's a headline: Bill Gates backed nuclear energy company set to revolutionize U.S. energy by 2030. And this speaks of his project in Wyoming, which would use liquid sodium reactors.
Right, and they want to use these small reactors which don't exist. And the history of the nuclear power industry has been complete failure. What Forbes magazine called the largest managerial disaster in business history.
Yeah,
they want to repeat history here. Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can get back to where I was. Hold on a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
so liquid sodium was the Fermi reactor. That's what they used there. It basically, they had a meltdown very shortly after they started. Just a little bit of history there. Okay, so Mark Jacobson, who's probably one of the world's leading experts on climate and energy, points out that, as you know, only 3 reactors have opened this century. One of them took 42 years to complete. Another one bankrupted Westinghouse. And the one that did open in Georgia, which you're referring to, the second one is the most recent one. The energy from that plant, which by the way was many years late and billions over budget, is $16 a watt. The energy cost of wind is $1 a watt, and solar is 17 cents a watt. New nuclear takes 10 to 15 years for construction, 17 to 22 years overall from planning to operation. And in the case of Vogtle, it was 7 years late and $7 billion over budget. And the payoff is, as we found out at Palisades, the reason that energy bailed out and sold it for scrap at Palisades was that they lost all their subsidy. But the ratepayers were paying 50% more for that power than they were paying for non-nuclear power. Carl's, he just pointed out about mined uranium does not show up in perfect form. It has to be refined, which takes a lot of energy and causes pollution. And nuclear reactors are belching water vapor and heat, contributing to global warming. Evaporated water from the giant steam generators is a major greenhouse gas. So the idea that a nuclear power plant is clean is simply not true. New nuclear power plants cost 2 to 3 to 7.4 times those of onshore wind or utility solar per kilowatt hour. And they take 5 to 17 years longer between planning and operation and produce 9 to 37 times the emission per kilowatt hour as wind. And the other incredible part of this is that New York spent $7 billion to add 12 years to the life of 3 reactors. They did this, I think, in 2017. Considering, and the ratepayers are paying for it. They boosted rates to pay for this $7 billion. And considering the fact that these reactors are going to be replaced by wind and solar in a few years, it would have been a lot less expensive and better for the environment if that money had gone directly into renewables.
Right.
Here's something else that's not generally known. In the Darlington reactors in Canada, which are going offline for they're basically rehabilitating them, renovating them. That process is 4 years. These are operating reactors. So the very idea that Palisades can be restarted in 1 year, when you consider the fact that even some of the spare parts that they need to restart the reactor, Energy got rid of them. So we're not sure exactly where they're going to find them. Even some of the manual information, Holtec is missing. And that means they're going to have to rebuild various instruction manuals at a cost of $18 billion. It's been mentioned that Holtec has never built or operated a nuclear reactor. I actually met last week some of the Holtec executives, including the plant manager, and I also had an opportunity to meet many of their employees who were present for the announcement of the restart. And what was really interesting to me was the fact that during this entire process, there were a couple of hundred Holtec employees there. I didn't see a smile out of one of them. And the only people who were smiling were the energy secretary and the governor. But none of the Holtec people were smiling. And that's because they know that everything Kevin just told you it was a reactor. There was a huge hundreds of millions of dollar lawsuit. It was built wrong from the beginning. And to try to get this up and running in a year, even with $8.3 billion, they claimed it was only going to be a $1.5 billion federal bridge loan. No, it's $8.3 billion to start it. And the other thing about the SMRs is this, that the only SMR that's ever been built in the United States, which is going up in Idaho, actually the company building it gave up and abandoned it in January because of cost overruns. So
Right.
This is why there's such a rush to try to restart these old reactors.
Well, the bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. The reactor in Georgia, Volkel number 4,
Right.
if and when it opens, will be the last large light
Right.
water atomic reactor, commercial atomic reactor, ever built in the United States. There are no more under construction, no more on order. So there's 0 new large reactors going to be coming
Right.
online at exactly the time where we need to replace fossil fuels to prevent the planet from burning up. At the same time, they're pushing these small modular reactors. There's one prototype in China. One company has already failed with building them. The cost projections are, double, triple what solar and wind will be, and they cannot have a prototype in the United States by their own admission until 29 or 30. So for the next 5 or 6 years, there will be 0 new nuclear power plants coming online in the United States at precisely the moment where we need to fight global warming. And Kevin got it right. They're now going to fight tooth and nail to keep these old reactors from shutting. And that is the most dangerous thing that we really face, because
So,
these
Harvey, there's
are
one other
completely
thing.
out of control.
There's one other thing. So Mark Jacobson at Stanford has put together a plan that would pay for itself, do what you just said, which is entirely wind, water, and solar, which means there'll be no brownouts, no blackouts, supply all of Michigan's energy needs, and cut energy costs by more than 40%, and create 242,000 jobs all over the state, and at the same time reduce CO2 emissions by 89 million tons, and it pays for itself. So the question is, why are they not listening to Dr. Jacobson and Kevin and you? That's a good question.
Well, from your lips to dog's ears, as we say. Let's go to Ruth Strausser, who's had a hand for a while. Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, this is a great conversation of everybody's, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask Kevin or anyone else, what they thought of, I believe his name is Greg Jackso, who wrote the book
Yes,
Confessions of a Rogue Nuclear Regulator. And also I want to tell you guys that you're really brave, because if anybody remembers Silkwood, these boys don't play. And so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. It's Greg Yasko. He was the chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. He had been on the staff of Harry Reid from Nevada, and he was the first chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to actually care about regulating the nuclear industry. And they concocted a whole ridiculous thing to get rid of him. But he has held his ground. It really push came to shove when he tried to apply lessons learned from Fukushima to the nuclear industry. And then they really couldn't handle that. And they got rid of him. And they just got rid of Josh Barron, who was also a regulatory commissioner who expressed concern for the public safety. What a concept. But Greg Yasko is a very important guy, along with Peter Bradford, Victor Golinsky. That's basically the list of nuclear regulatory commissioners who actually have cared about public safety.
Yeah, I've known Greg since June of 1999. He was a Hill staffer when I joined NEARS. He first worked for Ed Markey as a science fellow. And Ed Markey was the Democratic floor manager on the Yucca Mountain vote in 2002. So then Greg moved over because of his good work for Markey to Harry Reid's staff and became Harry Reid's top Yucca Mountain staffer, as Harvey said. And that was the main reason the industry hated him at first. In fact, they blocked Yasko's nomination to the NRC for several long years. And finally, what Harry Reid did in response was he held up all of George W. Bush's Environment and Public Works nominees. That includes EPA. Nothing was getting through until Yasko got through after a 2 or 3 year holdup. So he got through. He was the only Democrat left on the commission when Obama won the presidency. Obama made him chairman. And like Harvey said, there was a mutiny at the NRC instigated by the industry. The Fukushima lessons learned. Also, Yasko, to his credit, very courageous. He got the president and the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, to issue a 50-mile evacuation for Americans near Fukushima during the first days of the catastrophe. If not for that, the Japanese story was, oh, you just got to get 12 miles away, you'll be okay. So this difference between the US government and the Japanese government was huge, unheard of. And it was Yasko who made that happen. That said, he only voted our way on the commission about a third of the time. He picked his battles carefully. One that stands out is when he voted for the 20-year license extension at Palisades.
Oh, God.
But he's made Jeff Barron, Yasko looks really good compared to Jeff Barron, who voted even less with us. Allison McFarland was Obama's second NRC chairman. She only voted right a couple times in 2.5 years. She's done some good work since leaving. For example, she points out in a peer-reviewed study that the small modular reactors will generate 2 to 30 times the amount of high-level radioactive waste per unit of electricity generated than current reactors do because of loss of economy of scale. She's also written books about why Yucca Mountain is unsuitable. So I don't mean to denigrate her, but as commissioner, as chairman of the agency, she did very little for the public interest.
Well, if you want to see how the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission works, watch the documentary on HBO on Chernobyl and look how the Soviets did it, because it's exactly the same. I mean, the Soviet regulation of their nuclear industry and the American regulation of our nuclear industry is pretty much carbon copied. And by the way, we still have 37 people on this call, which is fantastic, especially on the Easter weekend. I'd like to say our participants have the longest attention span of anybody cross-section of people in America. But the bottom line is I marched against Fukushima in Japan in 1978. And I was one of like 10 Americans in the crowd, but they exactly predicted, the people of Japan predicted exactly what was going to happen at Fukushima. And now we know it's so outrageous. I can barely say this. At Palisades, they actually were at the point of selling parts out of Palisades. Palisades have become a junker that you keep in your front lawn, and you sell the generator, or you sell the, you know, the spark plugs or whatever. They were selling parts out of Palisades, and now they want to turn it on and reopen it. You got to be kidding me. I mean, that's insane. Carl Grossman, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to, I don't know if nuclear realities will deal with this. I think it's going to take, like it's taken through the decades, people power, getting media to get it right. I mean, this constant repetition about how nuclear is carbon free is from I'm a journalism professor. It's just so wrong. It's so incorrect for media to parrot that industry line. But he could have the Biden administration joining in. God knows what would happen if it can be another Trump administration. You have the nuclear industry allied. It's really conspiratorial with the nuclear proponents in government. People like John Gottman 60, 70 years ago talked about there'll be accidents. There've been accidents, and still that doesn't stop these SOBs. Part of this this new Atomic Energy Advancement Act is to continue the Price-Anderson Act, which would continue to limit liability. It would make it 30 billion, which is just a fraction of what a nuclear disaster is going to cost, and so forth. But again, the push is on again. And the need here is huge for people to stand up, as you coined the phrase, no nukes, Harvey, to again scream and yell and demand no nukes.
Well, here's the bottom line also, which is really infuriating to me, especially as someone who lived in Ohio for 50 years. The north coast of Ohio, if you come down from the Lake Erie about 50, 60 miles, the north coast of Ohio is perfect for wind power, as is much of Michigan. And we had in Ohio in 2014 a $4 billion backlog of approved wind power projects. And I actually I was in the wind business for a short period of time, and I went up to Northern Ohio, and I sat in farmhouses with people who owned land. And the land in Northern Ohio, like most of Michigan, is flat, and there's plenty of transmission lines. And these farmers, we were proposing these farmers that they sign agreements to put windmills on their land, and they would get very substantial lease payments for doing nothing. And the average windmill, even a megawatt windmill, they're up to 5, 10 now, is an acre at the bottom. If that, not even really an acre, the base. It's all it takes. And if you ever hear somebody tell you that wind power takes up too much land, you know they don't know what they're talking about. Because the average wind turbine takes an acre or less. You can build a road to the wind turbine if you want, but they don't even do that. When they build it, there's a road. It's a dirt road. Then they plant right over it. Something goes wrong with the windmill in the middle of the summer. They just drive over the crops. It's not a big deal. So there's virtually no land consumed with putting in windmills. So we had $4 billion worth of wind that was going into Northern Ohio. It would have completely changed the energy picture of Ohio. It would have dropped energy prices in half or less. It would have completely dwarfed the 2 nuclear plants in capacity, Perry and Davis-Besse, created thousands of jobs, saved hundreds of farms, and really been an industrial boon to the state of Ohio, which could happen in Michigan with the $8 billion or the $15 billion they want to waste on Palisades and new nuclear plants. Can you imagine the string of windmills that could be built across the state of Michigan with $8 or $15 billion? All the jobs that would be created, the farms that would be saved, the energy prices that would drop, the carbon emissions that we avoided, and the radioactive emissions. And here they want to blow this money to revive this old nuclear plant. You got to be kidding. And the same thing is true of this great genius, Bill Gates, who wants to build a factory for this unproven technology, small modular reactors, in Wyoming, for God's sakes. Do you know what the wind capacity of Wyoming is? It's basically limitless. If they took the money that they would want to put on the small modular reactors and built factories, or even just one factory in Wyoming to build wind turbines, it would completely change the picture of energy forever in Wyoming and in the United States. So what are these people thinking? We will have no more old, big nuclear reactors built in the United States, not the light water. For the first time since 1954, when they started building Shippingport outside of Pittsburgh, Westinghouse and the Navy, there will be no new large reactors under construction. That's 70 years that's about to end when Vogtle goes online, God forbid. And meanwhile, they're talking about small modular reactors that they can't have a prototype for another 5 years. So we have this 5-year gap of no nuclear plants coming to help us with global warming. What are these people thinking? They're completely out of their minds. I can't explain it. Maybe you can. Tatanka Bricka, do you want to give us an explanation for what these people are thinking? Are you got to unmute you here? Sorry.
Trying. Oh, there we
you
go. Okay. What did the 1992 secret Pentagon planning document do when Bush and Wolfowitz and guys got together after the wall came down? And we were talking about a peace dividend. They said, nope, time for full spectrum dominance. What are these guys thinking? In the energy world, they're thinking full spectrum dominance. And they started this over at least 50 years ago in the 70s when I heard it out of Stanford Research Institute, that they were going to, in 1978, I was told we will have a complete change of government in 1980. Solar panels will come off the White House. You won't hear about solar for the rest of the century. And then you'll have this gradual buildup. And by the year 2020, the oil companies will be all for solar and renewable energy, but on their timeline, because they intend to own all energy on Earth. It's an economic full spectrum dominant strategy. So let's not just tear our hair out, just say it for what it is. And so Carl's right. I mean, everybody who spoke is right. We need a people's movement because nobody, they're not going to do it for us. They're playing out their role. And that's their objective. That's how I see it.
Right. And what they haven't counted on is one of the great miracles, technological miracles of the 20th and 21st century is with the process of renewables. I mean, renewables has outstripped everything. On this show, when we had Amy Lovins a few weeks ago, I asked Amy, there was a Toward Tomorrow fair in UMass in 1975. And that's where Amy really started talking about a complete transition to renewable energy. That's really where the idea of Solartopia was born at this Toward Tomorrow fair in 1975. And Amory's there, and also a guy named William Hieronymus, who was talking about 5 megawatt windmills in the offshore. And people were laughing at him, and now the Chinese are building 18 megawatt windmills offshore. But the bottom line is that we have now progressed with Mark Jacobson's book, which Roger mentioned, called No Miracles Needed. Carl has also mentioned it. And Amory's work, Amory's still on the case, that we have every bit of the capacity needed, technologically, industrially, financially, to convert the world to 100% renewable energy. Soon, quickly. China every year installs more solar energy than we have built in 50 years in the United States. Every year they're doing it. They now dominate 80% of the world's solar process. So, you
Well, the
know,
other thing, Harvey, that I want to add to this is Whitmer was jumping up and down about 1,000 jobs. 240,000 jobs for wind and solar is like another General Motors. That's more jobs than GM has in, the big three. It's pretty close to what they employ in Michigan. So this is not a joke. And those jobs are all over the state. They're not just in one city or one place. They affect farmers in rural towns. Everybody wins, and the lead time is much shorter. There's no argument possible against this proven technology that's totally carbon free. All of their arguments are completely and totally false. And that's why all the people at Holtec, why nobody else wanted to build this thing except a company that had never built a reactor or actually operated one. And notice nobody else bid for this, not Energy or any of the companies that actually do know what they're doing. So that tells you everything you need to know. And the reason why they went with this company is because nobody else who was qualified to do it had the least interest at all in taking this broken wreck of a plant. I mean, if you read the expert witness testimony that Kevin so beautifully did, they're talking about buying parts on eBay. It's not a joke. That's how bad it is. Not a joke. Because they got rid of all the spare parts, because it was sold for scrap.
that's just surreal. They have a nuclear plant. It was up on blocks in the yard. They're selling parts, and now after they sold the parts, they want to reopen the thing.
Yeah, it's Antique Roadshow is what it is.
Oh God. Well, I have a nuclear plant. I'll put some spare parts up on eBay that maybe they can buy. Where did you get the number of 240,000 jobs, Roger?
Mark Jacobson.
Oh, and did he look at
the link? Kevin and I both put the link up. It's on the chat. Yeah.
Did he look specifically at Michigan?
Yeah, he actually studied Michigan specifically, right? And it pays for itself when energy rates go down 40%. One of the things that's so important to this is they want these plants because they can raise the rates more. And that's what's going on in every one of these countries. They can charge more for energy, period. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, by the way, gets $40 million. That's where most of their money comes from Holtec for restarting this plant.
Oh my God. Steve Caruso, did you want to jump in here? Steve?
Yeah, Holtec is hedging our radiation future. Thank you.
Right.
But in Australia, you know how long it takes to get solar panels? About a week. And in the United States, it's ridiculous. It takes months, and then their costs are like $7,000 to install a system on a house. I don't know what the quantity behind it, but generally, it's a total flip-flop from what we're doing in the United States. It's so easy, it's fast, it's cheap, but there you go. Thanks.
Well, I'm looking at solar panels on my house here in LA, and I've got what I think is a good company. And one of the major incentives is to heat my pool, which, it costs about $1,000 a month if you use gas to heat a pool, even in LA. And if I heat it with electricity from the solar panels, it will not affect my electric rate. My electric rate, instead of going down like Paul's has, will stay the same, but I'll be able to heat the pool and charge a car.
Jay Ponte is here.
Yes, Jay, good to see you. We're going to get to you in a minute. We're just dealing with the nuclear power industry here. Jay's got some organizing stuff. So this is quite amazing. I want to get Roger, you and Kevin back with Mark Jacobson. If you have a connection to Mark and tell him we want to be on, it would be great to have him on, and we can go through this. But this is a very big deal to take a reactor. Yeah, I mean, Davis-Besse is bad enough. I mean, Kevin knows more about Davis-Besse than anybody else on earth. I mean, it is a completely insane that it operates even another day, the reactor at Toledo. And as I say, it could have shut. They killed the wind industry in the North Coast in 2014 with a single sentence in the Ohio Code. They just set a setback clause where you had to have the windmills back a certain distance from the property line, and they set it so that no one could build nuclear plants. Windmills has no relation to the environment, nothing to do with human health. It's just they put it in there to kill the wind industry. And you know, the same with the wind industry in Michigan, which is going to go right across the state and completely power the state of Michigan, along with solar, no doubt about it. So let's have Mark Jacobson on with us as soon as possible. Roger, you and Kevin will come back and we'll deal with it. And it's always good to have Carl with us as well. So there you go. Does anybody want to jump in again on this? Tatanka, go ahead.
It sounds like we need an effective media PR campaign to link the political and economic action to the people, because we talk about this, we know this, but people have to get this, and they have to get it visually and repetitively, because the moment, you know, you're going to have what could happen in wind in Ohio, they don't even want people to see the comparison and the possibility. It was like why it takes decades for people to even get to Cuba. They don't want people to even think of a different economic model. They just want people to, you know, stay in the dark. So I don't know, maybe can we start our own film festival, you know, Solartopia Film Festival, and get it? I don't know. I'm just grasping for straws here.
I just went to a book tour and I learned something, having been a publisher, including a book on nuclear power, which Kevin just sent a text from IEER, you know, insurmountable risks, and also carbon-free nuclear grief. And your point is exactly on target. We need a real publicist. I just finally had one after many, many years of being an author, and it's like night and day. They actually get their calls returned. And I'm actually working. I have a conversation next week with a real publicist who can get people like you, Kevin, and people like Mark and Harvey and so forth, and all of you, Carl and so forth, on the right shows, so that we can defeat this myth that nuclear energy is clean energy. It's not in any way, shape, or form. I want to just add this point. You've got to hear this story. One of the workers of Palisade told it to me. So back before 9/11, you realize Palisade is on Lake Michigan. You can drive your boat up, you know, onto the beach, your jet ski, and then 20 minutes later, a sheriff will show up and ask you to leave. That's the security they have there right now. But in the olden days, before 9/11, on a blizzardy day when it was 10 degrees, you could put on a snowsuit, cross-country ski up to the plant outflow where the water happens to be 105 degrees Fahrenheit, take off your snowsuit, jump in the water, go swimming, then put your snowsuit back on, and then ski back to the park. True story.
Yeah, and then you'll glow in the dark, so you don't have to use your lights on the car. And the bottom, I want my next big project, and of course will be part of the show, is that I want to see if we can very quickly, as fast as possible, get solar panels on every rooftop in Los Angeles. We have a municipal that has about 10 million people in LA County. About half of them are in the Department of Water and Power, which is muni owned. And you know, you fly into LAX or Burbank and you look down, you see mile after mile of flat roofs in LA. And if we could get panels on every rooftop in LA, we could charge every vehicle in LA, and we could heat every pool, and there would be no need for any fossil fuels whatsoever, and it would change the world. So I think, you know, Paul Newman has led the way here with his rooftop, and let's just do this and start with LA and change the world. But meanwhile, the other thing people have to understand, again, nuclear power, there will be no new nuclear plants in the United States for the next 5 years. Even if everybody who opposed nuclear power turned around and supported nuclear power, they still can't get any new reactors for 5 years. They're done. And so we have to jump into this gap and fill it with renewables. This is our opportunity. So there you go. Milo, you have a hand, then we're going to get Jay Ponte do his thing here. It's been great having you guys on. Like I said, I knew Roger in 1966, for God's sakes. They wouldn't let him be editor of the Daily because he was too good of a reporter. and they wanted to shut the Daily after I wrote my editorial for legalizing pot. So Roger and I have both had a hand in the almost demise.
You haven't told the story about Fermi 1 and how long it took us to find out that we almost got.
There you go. Roger and I were together in Ann Arbor in 1966 when the Fermi nuclear reactor almost blew up 40 miles away. And we were at the Daily. We had the AP machines. I was the UPI correspondent. None of us heard a word about the disaster at Fermi 40 miles away that could have killed us all until 1974, when John G. Fuller, with the Reader's Digest, published We Almost Lost Detroit. None of us, when I was reading this book, I remember reading We Almost Lost Detroit, and I'm saying, God, we almost all died in Ann Arbor, and nobody knew about it. It's amazing. So there you go. Mila, and then we'll go to Jay Ponte. This has been really great having a Michigan show here. If we can get Mark Jacobson, we'll do this again.
We can, we'll get him,
We'll get him, okay? Mila, go ahead.
One of Gil Scott-Heron's greatest songs, We Almost Lost Detroit.
It was actually the first
really
rap
remarkable.
Song. The first rap song ever written was We Almost Lost Detroit.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But I've got a question for you just before we go to Jay Ponte. I'm wondering, Harvey, Oliver Stone made a film advocating for nuclear power, and it's my understanding that you issued a challenge for Oliver Stone to debate you about nuclear power, and I'm just wondering, have you heard from him yet?
No. Oliver Stone fulfilled every leftist's dream is to be in an Oliver Stone movie, right? And Oliver Stone put me in his pro-nuclear movie. And so I've since been challenging him. Mila and I, as co-hosts of our California Solartopia show in LA, we've been challenging Oliver to come debate me, but so far he hasn't come out. So we're looking forward to it. And Roger, I understand you're doing a major article now on all this. Where is it going to be published and when will you be done with it?
I'll send it to all of you. I hope it'll be out this week, and I'll let you know, okay?
Okay, good.
As soon as it's published, we'll send it to everybody and you can distribute it, okay?
Right. Roger's a great writer, truly one of the pioneering muckrakers in this country. All right, listen, that's great. We still have 30 plus people with us on an Easter Sunday weekend or Monday. It's really great. But Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you back again, and Roger, and we'll do Michigan again with Carl and Tatanka. So Wendy Lederman, you have brought us Jay Ponte. Could you introduce Jay Ponte for us? And Jay is a great organizer out here, I believe. We have met, Jay and I, and the 33 people still with us. It's really muted. How did I get muted? Anyway, listen, Wendy, there we go. Wendy, if you'll introduce the great Jay Ponte to us, that would be great.
Thank you. And I just turned off my video so I don't get lost again. And it's funny, Jay asked me if I needed a bio, and I said that you gave such a great one at the beginning. But yeah, Jay's an awesome organizer. He's a writer. He did work with the Occupy Wall Street movement, and I'm sure he can fill in a little bit more than I can with his own bio things that he wants to discuss. But after our awesome discussion last week with Assange and with Steve Donziger, talking about the political prisoners, but also the attacks on dissent, and where do we go from here as organizers, especially after we saw what happened with Occupy. So I was hoping Jay would just come in and give some comments and some of his thoughts. So yeah, I see. Are
you on mute?
Little something I can say here, Jay. I'm gonna let you go ahead and introduce yourself, all right, and just speak your mind. And we're just
very shy in that way
to have you.
Yeah, right.
It's okay. You're among friends. It's a safe zone.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh yeah, well, I am the author of the new book, Be the Revolution: How Occupy Wall Street and the Bernie Sanders Movement Reshaped American Politics, which is sort of a Hunter S. Thompson gonzo adventure into the last 12 years of grassroots resistance from my experiences with Occupy Wall Street, but really it shows how it's dispelling the popular mythos that Occupy failed, that Bernie Sanders only became successful appealing to unrealistic millennials. And it shows that actually Occupy Wall Street was behind Bernie Sanders. Occupy Wall Street, PDA, activists. Actually, not only did Occupy not fail, but it never ended. And it traces all the way through the modern American labor movement. And I think hopefully gives good context as to the train wreck the Democrats are now headed towards again, vis-a-vis the global movement for neo-fascism. So yeah, and I think it's definitely relevant for these topics because I describe in detail how what I call the corporate state works in a way. You have the police state, elected officials, private industry, and the media colluding to dismantle activist work, healthy populist movements, very much to the detriment of the republic.
Well, so tell us what the real takeaway is from your book in terms of grassroots organizing. Because that's
Can you give me a little bit more? Is there anything contextually, like I know Wendy was one, we were talking about Stephen Donziger, but do you want to speak broadly, or is there anything more specific? Because
go ahead, because we started. You weren't with us today, but with Ray McClendon and Andrea Miller, who are two of the great legendary grassroots organizers. And one of our concerns, and we really need to address this major concern, is that the Democrats are about to blow it again because they're going to take all this money. People are terrified of Trump as well. We have to be. And they're going to the Democrats are going to take all this money and they're going to blow it on media organizing again and not do the kind of grassroots organizing that needs to counteract a guy like Trump.
Yes. And I think moreover, my book really does give a tell-all, a blow-by-blow tell-all of what happened in 2016 that led to Trump. If you go on my website, betherevolution.us/home, you can actually download a free bonus chapter that didn't make it in the book that my editor cut, but it's called Why Trump Won. And it's really an autopsy of, and spoiler alert, has nothing to do with Susan Sarandon. It's actually based on an article I wrote called 27 Reasons Trump Won That Have Nothing to Do with Susan Sarandon. And, what it comes down to is that the Democrats, the Democratic Party establishment really has like Napster, sorry, not Napster, the record industry, when Napster came out, basically the record industry failed to adapt. And the Democrats are trying to hold on to an old model and again, stifling healthy populist movements, progressive movements, things that people care about. And instead, they're trying to hold on to their old models of raising money from the wealthy donors in the Hamptons. And right now, they're also simultaneously enabling and abetting genocide in Gaza. A lot of people are really, really, really pissed off about this. Plus, Biden didn't follow through on a lot of his campaign promises. This is really, really dangerous because it paves the way for another Trump administration, which would be absolutely disastrous to any of the very urgent organizing and policy changes. Really, we're at the stage where humans have less than 6 years to radically transform our way of life. According to the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change by the UN, this is thousands of climate scientists. We have very little time to radically make a transition. And under a Trump administration, that is going to be, really, there really is not going to be a whole lot we can do. And again, that's not an endorsement of the Biden administration, who I think has failed miserably. But again, so we have these two problems of the climate apocalypse, these genocidal, stupid wars, and then plus you have this global movement of neo-fascism. So, yay!
Well, here's the question then.
Sure.
What is it? How you're saying that you're telling basically how Trump won in 2016, and how is this to be avoided in 2024? Give us the
okay. So
not the elevator speech. Give us the 14-story walk up the stairway as
Okay.
to how Trump actually won in 2016.
Well, okay, so how he won in 2016, this is really important. Again, I wrote an 80,000 word autopsy because there is a lot of ground to cover, including 40 years of neoliberalism. So there are conditions like the Democratic establishment shifting its focus from working class people and unions. That was outlined really wonderfully in the book Listen Liberal by Frank, what's his name? And it's called Listen Liberal. Great book. Check it out. So there are those just basic conditions. NAFTA, was a big reason. So there are those like long-term economic reasons where the Democratic Party started shifting the focus to the idea of a technocracy. The really smart Harvard-educated people are going to fix it all. So just go and be consumers. So that was decades in the making, starting with Reagan and then every president, from then on, really continuing the same. And then you also have the Democrats, the way the campaign was the primaries were organized, were absolutely had its finger on the scale for Secretary Clinton, who was a bad candidate. She had the worst net favorables of any possible candidate. And, the race, like I told Mark, there's a story in the book where we're at the Democratic Platform Committee. And I told the Clinton campaign, this was like the Sanders delegates and the Clinton delegates. And I said, this race is going to come down to the angry white guys that got fucked over by NAFTA and the Rust Belt. And now
we can't use 400 words like that.
Oh,
so.
sorry. Got
All right.
screwed over. Thank you. Bleep,
No
bleep,
problem.
bleep, bleep.
And- By the way, Listen Liberal was written by Thomas Frank.
Thomas Frank. That's right. Great book. And so, you have a number of basically, the book goes into great detail about the lengths that the Democratic establishment went to push Secretary Clinton through and suppress a candidate that was selling out arenas like the Rolling Stones and had a lot of enthusiasm. But then when we get into the general election, essentially conservatives can be motivated to vote out of fear, but left-leaning people who will vote democratically need to be inspired based on vision, based on things they care about. And I'm not Trump and Trump is scary is not a viable campaign strategy. It's not. Plus they were relying on, they paid $1 billion in to consultants to give sage advice like don't campaign in Michigan. She never stepped foot in Michigan, never stepped foot in Wisconsin. And ultimately, the Democratic establishment has failed to pass policies that are going to benefit working people. And even though Trump is worse in that regard, they shifted $3.4 trillion to the 1%, he at least gives his base the delusion that he's fighting for them, where the Democrats don't. They constantly are not doing the opposite.
Well, what do you think of the argument that the Democrats tend to take these billions of dollars and spend them on media and don't do grassroots organizing?
Right, because that is how they make their money. The book also talks very much about the consultant class. There is a consultant class whose entire business model is just to raise money from the base, and it's a loop. Take money in from the base, and it is money that business is good. They spent $1 billion, and this consultant class will rarely innovate. Whereas the right-wing fascists, always kind of stay ahead of the curve. There's an entire chapter on how QAnon was organized, which really needs to be studied because they are using every advantage, Cambridge Analytica needs to be studied. The right-wing fascists are using every advantage, and the Democratic consultant class basically are still giving the same strategies that Rahm Emanuel gave when they won they had some midterm wins in 2006.
So what is the answer here? How is it possible to move the money that goes to the Democratic Party to buy media into grassroots organizing. Well, as by Ray McClendon and Andrea Miller and others.
I would say that what we can do is realize that they're not going to change. I mean, boy, it's going to continue to take a lot of extraordinary disruption for the Democratic, for that consultant class to want to have a change of psyche and tactics. It's really up to us to localize, to do ground game, to do everything we can on our own, to organize, to mobilize coalitions, to deal with strategy. And yeah, I mean, I do think we do still need to keep the pressure on. I think we need to keep the heat on, and there is a convention coming up. I think it is still possible. I know I would remind people that every convention prior to Jimmy Carter was how we decided the nominee. And it is still technically possible for another candidate to be put up to run against Trump. Because
Who would that be?
That's a tough question. In my heart, I feel like it would be Barbara Lee. I feel like she's the it's for me. But if I'm stepping back as sort of like someone who's giving an analysis with all factors considered, not someone I personally like, but I think you would need someone like Gavin Newsom. I hate to say this out loud, but Michelle Obama, Oprah, it's just terrible that this is where we're at. But if I'm just giving an analysis, I would say those are the people. But my personal choice, I would want, someone like Barbara Lee, Barbara Lee has the receipts, only person to vote. But again, like there may be some political viability issues there. We don't
want Gavin Newsom is the guy who stabbed us in the back.
I don't like him. It's sort of, you're asking from an analysis question, who can beat Trump? I'm not saying I like him or would want him. Agree. I mean, a hard agree. He's been way too in the pocket of fossil fuels. But again, like here's the thing that I really hope people take in, and as a takeaway from my book, is one of the issues is we approach politics through a consumerist lens. We look at our candidates as they're like my candidate is the most organic kombucha, or I don't like this kid. It's not about who you like, who you see yourself in. That is irrelevant. The real question, if you're looking at it as an organizer, it's who do I want to organize against? That is the only question that is relevant as an organizer. It's who would I rather, because either way, we're going to have to organize against them. Either way, their power concedes nothing without a demand. But the question is, who do you want to face? Who can you win the most ground against? And so those are the questions. That's why, Gavin Newsom would for me would be someone that I do think we could win ground, win serious ground against. But yeah, in no way would I endorse him as someone who I like.
Let's see if we can get Diablo Canyon shut. We're almost to the end here. I can't get you unmuted here, Wendy.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really great, Jay. I'm so glad you're here and discussing this, and I'm glad we'll hopefully continue this conversation. It's like so spot on, especially we see it on the micro levels in Florida. I think I want to say the name Ro Khanna is somebody I think that a lot of people could get behind. You're reminding me a lot of how we always forget that all the money, the dark money that the Democrats have put into extremist candidates just so they can have somebody to fear and scare up voters instead of actually earning them. We've been reporting a lot on the Cop City in Atlanta, but also the plans for 69 more of them. We see exactly what you're talking about, where the Democratic Party on all levels, I mean, even on like local city council, like the contempt they have for public will. And then when you see the crackdowns, like what happened with the infiltrations in Occupy and just how that's gone more and more. And I think the first time I you mentioned Hunter Thompson, who's my ultimate hero, and his reporting of the 68 convention. And when he got the crap literally beat out of him in front of the Democratic convention. And I think that was the turning point for all of the left when they started getting scared to come out and have civil disobedience. And I think now we're just at this exponential level. So I would really hope you would comment on, like, where do we go when we have a party that like feels like it hates us and is trying to put us all in jail so that the private prisons can make a bunch of money, and how do people organize when they're scared to go out in the street? And when it's getting polarized between that liberal elite class who, when the people that are seeking for social justice and equitable change are demonized in those same senses. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah. To respond at first, rest in power, Tortuguita, justice for Tortuguita. And, it's real. It's real out there. We faced, live ammunition at Standing Rock. There were political prisoners, Rattler, Red Fawn, spent years in jail for being political prisoners. Comrade, Dale Schlossberg faced 45 years in prison for documenting the valve turners. But, where do we go from here? For me, it always comes down to the extraordinary power of small groups of individuals to change the world. And throughout the book, I talk about multiple examples of small groups, individuals and small groups with little to no resources, if you are strategically sound, can absolutely change the world. The People for Bernie, there's a whole chapter on an affinity group called the People for Bernie. I bet a lot of us followed them. It was a handful of like 5 people. They never had meetings. They beat the Clinton campaign every single day on social media and performance on every platform. The Clinton campaign, with their infinite financial resources, troll farms, PACs, everything, beat them every single day. There's another story about, a group I belonged to called Divest LA and Public Bank LA, who passed public banking on the state level, who pushed LA City Council to divest $8 billion and unbundle 800 accounts. It is possible, but it is not possible when we are atomized and we are alone and we're just shouting into the void on social media. You got to get together with comrades and build coalitions, because there's just more of us than there are of them. And there are tactics that can work. And these things, like right now, I mean, there has been a lot of fatigue, but I also do believe that the conditions are there where there could be another mass awakening. Look at George Floyd. It happened overnight. Those conditions are still there. So, and also I recommend doing a lot of self-care, trauma, meditation. Like that's really important, because you need resilience, because this work is dangerous. It's scary. And you need to realize that there is a spirit inside of us that is eternal and is more powerful than any billionaires, more powerful than any, and that we are also eternal beings. And to connect with that power, these are the principles that Gandhi put forth when his satyagraha, and Martin Luther King certainly spoke a lot on this as well. Thich Nhat Hanh, a lot of great activists. So I believe it's an important part of the theory of change as well.
Great. Okay, we'll go to Paul Newman and Lynn Feinerman. We're almost done, folks. If you want to say something, now's the time to raise your hand, because we're soon to depart. What an amazing call. Again, we still have 28 people. Go ahead, Paul Newman, please. Oh, you're muted. Paul?
Thank you. You unmuted me. Thank you. Well, first of all, Jay, I just want to say I worked my ass off for Bernie Sanders in the 2020 election, and we won California. The problem with the Democratic Party, it's a neoliberal. It's owned by the neoliberals, and that's the problem. And it's driving so many people against them. But the message I've been getting lately in my world is that what's going on between Trump and Biden, even though Biden hasn't done anything yet for the ceasefire, is that it's about justice versus fascism and the rule of law. People are learning about Project 2025. They're hearing all this new stuff, and I'm very concerned. But I'm hearing the big message from the Democratic Party, and we'll see in the convention what happens, because I'm really curious, is that it's about justice versus fascism. If we, at least with Biden, we will be able to go out and protest and, exercise our constitutional rights. Trump wants to stop it completely. So, and, with the rigged Supreme Court, there's so many things against him. So what is your take on that? Justice
Well,
versus fascism.
I mean, those are very kind of abstract concepts. I agree. I agree because I mean, again, I really suggest people read the book, the chapter on QAnon in the book, because it gets into the real nitty gritty of who was behind it, how it was organized. It's terrifying. And you have draconian laws in Florida, decriminalizing running over protesters. You have Trump's forced hysterectomies in ICE facilities. You have nabbing activists off the streets in white vans. So again, like I am less concerned about these things under a Biden administration. I do believe that there is a tenuous, but at the same time, I understand the frustration with people who are just, again, recently they just greenlit another weapons and financial aid package, which is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And this war, just like Nixon, they're gonna give us another fascist. Yeah, they're gonna give us another fascist regime. But people need to understand this. The core driver is that the consultant class doesn't care, because they're going to make money and have their jobs anyways. And it's their entire financial model. The media establishment as well. They're going to make their money off of those ad buys anyways. So, we need to, on a grassroots level, it's really important that people continue to do. I don't have the stomach to do the work of running for ADEM or joining my local Democratic Party. I really, God bless you that do. I really respect you for doing that work.
There's a whole lot of Bernie people that I know,
yes,
that have our ADEMs.
Yes, and made really great gains. There have been some wonderful gains made. God bless you. But I would just say where we need to go as a movement is have the outside, those who are interested in outside organizing, protesting, disrupting, bird dogging, working with those who are inside allies. My book calls for an inside-outside strategy. I think we also need progressive primaries. We need to organize our own primaries, because what happened in California with Barbara Lee and Katie Porter, and it's counterproductive. We end up splitting the vote when the path forward is working together in solidarity. That's really the path forward, because the neoliberals have tons of solidarity. Yeah, sorry.
We need to look at the strategies that won in Georgia in 2020.
Absolutely.
We're trying to put together a guidebook for grassroots organizing, and we definitely want to coordinate with you as well. Okay, Lynn, and then Tatanka, and I think we're almost done.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a cold today. Maybe too late, but Jay Ponte, if you're really into organizing, what about trying to organize a Liz Cheney faction before the Republican convention that will at least be able to dramatize the fascist takeover? I mean, Liz Cheney is conscious that he is a fascist. What can be done about that?
I think if you have an idea, you should get some friends together and do it.
I'm a progressive, dear. I mean, how am I?
It's not my work. That's, it's not, for me, that's not my work, but I think if you get some friends together and put it out to some other groups, I don't know, there's the Lincoln group. It's not my work. It's not the work that I'm focused on, but I think that the idea that someone else should do it is what needs to be dismantled, because the one thing I think we got wrong in Occupy is that there are no leaders. And I think the driving message was that every one of us is a leader. It's going to take every one of us stepping up, and every one of us have a gift to give. We're all very important. You're important. And so if you are getting the idea to do this, go and do it.
Okay. I mean, this is why I love history. Who would think that the daughter of Dick Cheney, the ultimate Satan, would turn out to be a significant anti-fascist force in American society, which she is. Tatanka, go ahead.
Yeah. Jay, thanks for coming on. Wendy, thanks for getting him on. I, for one, will get your book. It's good to hear what you're saying. I think most all of us here understand the truth of much of what you're talking about, individuals and small groups. In fact, nothing else has ever really changed the world. And we have to recognize that, take care of ourselves. And when you were talking about the power of the human spirit, it's always good to hear that. I thought your analysis about just being how bad Trump is not a winning strategy. We know he's bad. There are lots of people out there that don't know he's bad. I mean, it's amazing how many people think it's going to be just like 2016. But we need the positive stuff to organize. So it's really good to have you on here. I look forward to you coming back. And we need the examples like Harvey's talking about solar panels on every roof in LA and all these little examples. And I'm glad you encourage Lynn to go out and do it. We need to each step up to what our gifts are, and who knows, who knows? I mean, yes, she had the training, but we never knew the woman who was sitting in the back of the bus would be the one that would be recognized in history. We never know. We never know what that tipping point is and what sparks the particular movement at a particular time. So we'll keep together during all this. And I really appreciate you, Harvey, again, for doing this show, because it does flesh out the Ray McClendons and Andrea Millers to the rest of us. And I think we need, in addition to maybe our own film school, we need our own pack. We need to find those people.
No, that's okay.
Did you swallow a bug?
While you're catching your breath, I shout out for trainings. We are offering trainings all over the country to go on tour. We're launching a mission, Be the Revolution, as we're bringing these capacity building trainings that go along with the book. We're hoping to bring it to young activists who don't know this history, who don't know the tactics, don't know who they're up against. And so if you're interested in getting involved in bringing a training to your neighborhood, to also help organize local rainbow coalitions, please hit us up, betherevolution.us/home. You can get your free bonus chapter that we talked about. Plus you can get the word on how to get involved.
Well, if you're doing that kind of touring, you need to connect with Ray and Andrea and their grassroots organizing work. And we are, as I say, Wendy's been putting together the People's Guide to Grassroots Election Organizing, and talks all about how we do door to door and all that stuff, and what kind of
amazing. Actually, my next book, would love to connect with them about that, because the next book coming out is called. This was the original, so this is the book. But the first book was called The Political Revolutionary's Handbook, which is coming out, and that's more of a how-to guide. So that's there is going to be inside and outside kind of a manual. So I'd love to connect, maybe share resources. I'm kind of more anarchisty, so I'm a fan of like everybody's on the same team, everybody helps everybody. So would love to.
Well, Wendy, why don't you send Jay a copy of what you got so far?
Happy to.
And maybe you guys can cross-check. Okay, we're almost done. In the interest of looking forward, I do want to raise a hypothetical here that we should be prepared for, which is that we're seeing now huge marches in Israel to get rid of Netanyahu. And the question is, how will, if in fact they succeed, and you remember there were huge marches in Israel to get rid of Netanyahu before this war. If the Israeli people succeed in getting rid of Netanyahu before our election, what impact do you think that will have? And will the left in the United States want to consider hooking up with the anti-Netanyahu movement in Israel to actually make?
There is already a contingent, like if not now, has been doing great work, and I believe that was incubated. That might have been a Momentum group, which also came out. It was like a post-Occupy activist incubator by Max Berger, but if not now, is doing wonderful work. Code Pink is doing wonderful work. So, it's not my field of expertise, but I think that Bibi and the Likud party fascists. These are also right-wing authoritarian fascists, and it's been happening for a long time. This is decades in the making. They're using this as an excuse to annex land and, of course, oil and natural resources, and it's all very much a conscientious move to genocide so that they can ultimately annex the land.
We understand that. That's a given. The question is, what impact on American politics and on the coming election would getting rid of Netanyahu have?
I think that, okay, what impact would it have on the election? I ultimately think the biggest impact will come by, do you mean that from a grassroots perspective? Like if Bibi, I think the problem isn't just Bibi and that regime. I think it's how voters perceive Biden is enabling that agenda. So really what needs to happen is either the Democrats need a new candidate or the Democrats need to show some real, I guess what we call chutzpah in standing up and cutting off the money, cutting off the weapons, and making a clean break. And really that needs to happen strong. And I hope it's not too late, because, just when they greenlighted this last 8 weapons and financial package, it was just like, oh God, like it's just the message that sends throughout the voter base is really shocking. And it's also not shocking. But the thing that the Democrats need to understand is that it's not just about voters. It's not just about voters, because you are turning the most passionate leftists in the most passionate left-leaning people, who are the ones to campaign, who also hate Trump mostly, and you are turning them into opposition, so that there are camps that are starting to see Trump as the peace candidate, and Trump is going to capitalize on that. Believe you me, even though he absolutely is just as much or more of an Israel supporter, Bibi Stan, he's also a sympathizer. He is going to hit Biden on this, because Biden is vulnerable on it, and he knows it's going to hurt Biden with his base.
Okay. Very good. So anybody else want to jump in? We're at 4:17. We still have 23 people, but it's Easter, and it's actually my granddaughter's 3rd birthday. So I will be leaving you to go to her party. Thank you very much, everybody. This was another really great call. Mike Hirsch, you raised your hand. Mike, you want to say something?
Sure, Sluggo, and thanks, Jay. I do see the protests in the United States, around the world, and in Israel are all forcing the Democrats to embrace a ceasefire and move forward on that. I think it will be in time to turn around the numbers. It really started with Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, coming out and calling for a ceasefire a full year before next election day. And they say a year is a lifetime in politics. So hopefully there'll be enough time for the Democrats to turn this around and show some life. This is a nonpartisan call, but we're free to be anti-Trump and anti-fascism, and anti-war crimes. So there you have it.
And Mike, you're a great commentator, but I'm going to correct you. The quote was from Bill Clinton, and he said 5 months. It's a lifetime in politics.
So that would be almost 3 lifetimes.
Right. Exactly. All right, you guys, it's 4:19. Time for Wendy to go out and choke up. It's been another great call. Wendy, you want the last word here? Go ahead.
Take it away, Wendy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I want to thank Jay again, that like he really articulated some things that I haven't been able to say as well, just especially about how the people most activated that will do the legwork are lost in the wilderness because they're so I mean, heartbroken. I mean, we're traumatized from witnessing, you know, because we're watching the social media, we're seeing the actual images coming out, and it's not what's being reported fully. And I mean, it's gruesome. It's really gruesome, and in ways that are going to last a lifetime. And
Okay.
and the whole planet, the UN, everyone's calling on this. And again, it goes back to the will of the people. So it's without justice for all people. And that includes the Palestinians, it includes the Congo and Sudan and all these things that are going on. But even if there's a new government in Israel, if it's still continuing the same policies and the same oppression, then those voters aren't going to come back. And I do think that this ties in very much with Assange and with Donziger, and having the ability to publish the truth and be able to defend the truth without fear of prosecution and persecution from anywhere in the world. So again, like, I think that all of our interests like kind of funnel down to the same revolution that Jay wants us to be. So
Okay.
we just need to keep
Well,
talking and just spreading the love. So thank you.
let's hope for peace. Let's hope for freeing Julian Assange, Leonard Peltier, Mumia, Steve Donziger, and all other political prisoners. And we'll see you again next week. Everybody, thank you. Thanks for joining us. No nukes, everybody, and another great call.
Sí se puede.
Oh, happy birthday.